Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. So make sure you subscribe and hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much for that. Flip, we're getting to the end of our NHL trade deadline reaction show. Just 10 more minutes left in the show. But we got to talk about the updated Stanley Cup odds. Everything's shifting around because of these trades, as well as some fantasy value for the players that were traded as well. Let's start with the Stanley Cup odds. They right here on the screen, Avalanche at plus 400. The Panthers plus 650. The Flames move up as well to plus 900. And you mentioned it off the top. The Minnesota Wild have not really moved compared to, the other teams. Even the Bruins at plus 1,400 now, still ahead of the Minnesota Wild, who are at plus 2,200. What are your thoughts on this updated Stanley Cup odds from BetOnline?
I would like to note this, Steele, because you were calling me Kookie Pants Flip, Kookie Pants McGee, and have a look. The Edmonton Oilers at more of a favorite to win the Stanley Cup. I said sprinkle a 20, sprinkle a 30, and look, maybe I'm not as crazy as I thought. No, do I think they're going to win it? No, do I think they're going to win it? But man, is that a juicy odd. Look, there is a lot of value here, okay? This is how I know I'm a degenerate. I know I have a little bit too much time to look at these kinds of odds, because when I see this, shout out to our friends at BetOnline, by the way. Thank you for the updated odds. Do not sleep on their options. We talked about that. Steele, I look at this, yes, Panthers at 650 for sure. But when I look at value, I'm looking Rangers. I'm looking Penguins even. I know that those come out of the same division, but if you're talking about a couple of value bets here for a 20 bean or a 30 bean or a $50 bet, there is definitely some value to be had here, my friend. Like the Wild at plus 2,200, I don't think you can go wrong with a couple of dollars there.
For me, the value teams I'm looking at right now, the Panthers are at plus 650. I think there is a ton of value there, but the teams I'm looking at are the Lightning at plus 900. They're looking to repeat for the Stanley Cup again. And the couple of moves that they made, acquiring Nick Paul as well as Brandon Hagel, who had a terrific season with the Chicago Blackhawks, you can't go wrong with the Tampa Bay Lightning at plus 900. But again, you mentioned it right there. If BetOnline is going to give me plus 2,200 on the Minnesota Wild, I'm going to take that every single time, especially with the moves they have made today. Very underrated team. A lot of people sleep on the Minnesota Wild, and I'm going to take advantage here and put some money down at plus 2,200.
The reason why the numbers are where they are, Avalanche favorite, Panthers are second favorite, is because they deserve to be. And no, I'm not talking, I think the Wild have a better shot at winning the Cup. That's not true. But when the playoffs start, we know that this is a different season. And as much as these odds do hold some water, they don't hold it all. And when it comes to putting money down on teams at this time of year, you can't go wrong when you look at some value for some smaller bets and really just sit back and enjoy the best time on the hockey schedule. And this is one of those, Steele. And, this is a fantasy show, so I also want to wrap before, we wrap up with the winners and losers of the day. I do really want to just kind of touch on, the fantasy impact of what I think is potentially the biggest move. We've talked about Claude Giroux. I think that could be huge. I think that at the end of it all, I like what the Florida Panthers did the best. They're probably my big winners of the day. But, man, the value for a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury down the stretch here, we talk about goalie creases for fantasy. His value just went way, way, way up. And if you can get Marc-Andre Fleury for the stretch run or for your playoffs for fantasy, I think that's a move that you most definitely have to consider.
There's a lot of players that you have to consider to, pick up on the waiver wire, guys who are under 50% owned. We talked about it.
Yep.
Even Claude Giroux, he's only owned at 75% on Yahoo Fantasy Leagues. If you're in a league and Claude Giroux is on the waiver wire, get off your butt and pick him up right now, because he's on the Florida Panthers as of today, and he's playing on the top line with Alexander Barkov and Jonathan Huberdeau and all of those guys who we know produce at an extraordinary amount. So Claude Giroux at 75% owned, Mark Giordano at 51% owned, Brandon Hagel, he's at 32, or he's at 12. Andrew Kopp's at 32. There's guys out there who have been traded to going to better teams, and their stock value is going to rise in the next couple of days. So you better jump on them quick.
Andrew Kopp, I'm glad you mentioned it. That was another guy on my list in terms of definitely double circle for his value going way, way up for a Rangers team that I think I teased it a little bit earlier in the show. This team is starting to really round into form, right? Like shouts to Ray Ferraro on the TSN trade bait today, mentioning that looks like a playoff team rounding into form. And when you're doing that at the end of March, that is when you start to flex your playoff muscles. You don't round into form at the end of April. That might be too late. You need to hit the playoffs running, and I think the Rangers will be that. And, they're not my big winner of the day, Steele, but they're up there on the winners list. I'm intrigued to see who you think is the winner of the day. Obviously there's a couple of clear winners. I've mentioned it. I think it's the Florida Panthers. I think they've really positioned themselves well to strike. The Rangers have honorable mention. So do even the Calgary Flames for the moves that they made before the deadline. But my big winners of the day and the lead up to it is the Florida Panthers, Steele.
I think it has to be the Florida Panthers. They made the strongest moves. They've acquired some of the top 5 guys who were on the trade bait list. So for me, being able to get Claude Giroux, Ben Sherratt, even Hag who's gonna on their 6th on the 3rd pairing now. The fact that they're able to go out and get out some very, very strong guys, and it blows my mind. Even the fact that they were the strongest team before they made these moves. So I'm with you right there. The Florida Panthers for me are the winners for the trade deadline day.
General manager, Zito, he deserves a lot of credit. I think the odds are still juicy for them at the Cup. I believe I was sending you some screenshots over the weekend saying, I'm jumping on this. I'm jumping on this before Claude Giroux lands. I got the Florida Panthers at 8-1. I got them at 7-1, and the odd is dropping. So I hope you were listening last week when I said you should sprinkle. Thank you for that. And yes, I believe they're the biggest winners of the day. Losers, man. I don't know. Losers on the day. Steele, like there's a couple out there. I don't know. Like who are you thinking? Like, because it's really hard for me to put my finger on because there were a lot of teams out there that I really expected to be much more active than they were. And I'm not going to go as far as to say the Pittsburgh Penguins are a loser because they got their guy in Rickard Rakell. But there's definitely some teams out there that I think should have been a lot more active. Do you have one that pops to the top of your head?
I have a couple. We won't get too deep into them, but for me, it's the Washington Capitals. They go out and get Marcus Johansson. He played for them for 6 years, I believe, really well. So they go out and make one move, I believe, as well as the Los Angeles Kings. They didn't really do much today as well. I think it's going to be difficult for them, especially being in that division with the teams they're up against. I would have expected a little bit more from the Kings organization to acquire a couple more guys offensively. But again, they're still a great team. I just thought they would have done a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Me too. And at the end of it all, we knew Kyle Dubas didn't want to trade his first round pick. And I think you made an excellent point about this actually clearly indicates to them how tough it is going to be to get out of the first round, and maybe the moves that were available that made sense weren't going to even push the needle forward. But I think the Leafs needed to make an ad. And I know the Harry Sateri thing kind of got slipped up from under them, but if that's really where we're at with bolstering the goaltending in Toronto, man, it does not leave me feeling confident heading into the playoffs in any way, shape, or form. I really hope I'm proven wrong with this Toronto Maple Leafs team, and I hope the forward group just comes out and absolutely stuns in the first round. I don't see it happening, but I really expected the Leafs to be making some sort of other moves. Hey, I'm not a GM. I know these are hard things to make happen, but they clearly are showing you're having to go up against these teams in Florida. Come on now. You needed to do something, and even something to show that room that you were doing it. The Harry Sateri thing is not good enough. And, at the end of it all, it even would have been nice to bring back a guy like James Reimer if that was possible, right? just to throw the fans in a frenzy. Shout out to producer Sean on the 1s and 2s because he would have been liking that move. But look, at the end of the day, Steele, I think you're right. The LA Kings should have been more active as well. But, I really just hope that everyone's enjoyed the coverage today because I've had a lot of fun with you, my brother.
It's been a lot of fun, a lot to digest, going through these trades. I don't think it would have been just Sean who would have been jumping out of their seat. I think a lot of people would have loved to see him, James Reiber, back in, the Maple Leafs logo and backing up Jack Campbell. Hopefully Jack Campbell can get back to his form back in the first half of the season, just and we can ride him the entire way for a deep playoff run. But everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast for the NHL trade deadline show, making it your first listen every day. Thank you so much. If you want more gambling advice, especially for the updated Stanley Cup odds, make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all podcast platforms, just like this podcast right here. So like I said before, please make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button, and make sure and once you do, you'll get the latest episodes of Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as they're available each and every day, Monday to Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. So you got to make sure you hit the subscribe and the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the support and all the love out there. So thank you so much for tuning in for today's podcast and the NHL trade deadline show with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your Stanley Cup, odds out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.